Did anybody else sit down and watch that FCS championship game? Because, boy, oh my, was that some, just absolutely sensational, incredible football that got played. Overtime game, the extra point gets blocked. You had, two kicks get blocked. You had just a phenomenal football game all the way around. What's up? It's Tailgate Nate back with another live stream today. We're going to be breaking down and predicting the college football playoff semifinals and a little late addition to the agenda. We will get to the Q&A portion if there are any questions out there for me, but we also are going to be talking about some of the transfer portal chaos that is happening very, very briefly. And we're going to recap the portal as soon as it all gets done. And the portal window closes and guys stop shifting around because, as you have seen in the portal, anybody can just upend and leave seemingly whenever they want now. And we're going to talk about a couple instances in that here today. But the biggest thing and the thing we're going to start out with is the predictions for the college football playoff semifinal matchup. And boy, this quarterfinal round was filled with upsets and fantastic finishes. Only one team that has earned a first round bye now in the 12-team history has moved on, that being the Indiana Hoosiers. So we are going to start with Ole Miss Miami. We'll move on to Indiana, Oregon. Again, we will preview the games as you see them, or I should say, as you will see them come up on your television screen. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Nate Bope, otherwise known as Tailgate Nate. I'm a sports media graduate with a massive passion for everything that goes on in the wonderful world of sports, but that especially includes the world of college football. Love it. I'm a nerd, my bread and butter. You want to join me in my journey and see everything I uploaded. Hey, you don't want to miss future live streams. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. It says it right down there. Ring the bell. Do everything you can. Help support the channel. Interact with it. Like, comment, share. All of the good things. But you can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at TailgateNate29, among a couple other social media platforms, so that you can get notified of other things that I do in the sports media realm, games I call, highlights I record, photos I take, anything really. So you also will be up to date on when streams are going on here. So thank you so much to everybody who is tuning in right now and that will tune in, trying to figure out the process to easily get the clips clipped and then sent over to YouTube. As you've noticed, they've been a little bit slow, but hey, this is a learning process. All right, you're learning with me. Promise you we will figure that out. Boy, can we revisit the FCS championship game for a second? First of all, Montana State, good job to the Bobcats. They finally get it done. They've been in that position for the past couple of years now, just right there at the top of the FCS level. So close. They just haven't been able to get over that tail end, and now they have, but it didn't come without a fight, and you got to give all the credit in the world to the Illinois State Redbirds. That was a team that sort of came out of nowhere in this run. Now, this run was also these FCS playoffs were also filled with upsets out of nowhere. Remember, Illinois State is the team that beat North Dakota State, national FCS power. I don't think that warrants any explanation. But Illinois State made a phenomenal run, man. They handled North Dakota State. They handled Villanova. They were able to win, I think, one or two more games during that run as well, and gave Montana State quite the battle there. Thought the Bobcats were going to have it by a certain point, but give the Redbirds credit. They never quit. They fought hard, got it until the very end. Some phenomenal plays, some phenomenal players. I love watching the FCS playoffs, and anytime I get the chance, I will flip on an FCS game. South Dakota State, North Dakota State, Montana State, Illinois State now. That's a team that you got to put on the radar, and just some really, really good athletes that were on both of those teams. Phenomenal game. Absolutely phenomenal game. Who knows? Maybe we will do FCS playoff bracket next year. Maybe. We'll see. Any Hoosers, we are now going to jump on into talking about the college football playoff semifinal. Two of what should be really good games, lots of storylines to follow. But the one thing is for certain, we're going to get a national champion that at the very least we haven't had in quite some time, or we are guaranteed one team in the national championship game that will be seeking its first ever national title, because Indiana, Oregon, they've never won it. Now, Oregon's been in the national title game a couple times this century. Indiana, my memory's not going to be that good to me right now, is it? Nope, I knew it wasn't going to be. So, and Big Ten guaranteed one spot there as well. You have SEC versus ACC on the other side. And that's where we're going to start. We're going to start with SEC versus ACC because it is the game coming up tomorrow night. It is the game that will grace our television screens first. And without any further ado, we will dive on in here to now talking about the way that we do things and predicting the college football playoff semifinal. One final time, though, before we do get into it, make sure you're subscribed. Make sure the bell is run. Don't miss future live streams. Maybe you missed this one. Maybe you're going to be jumping in halfway through. Hey, that's okay. No harm, no foul. Just make sure that you don't miss the next one. Ring the bell, subscribe, like, comment, share. Tell all your friends that love college football as much as me to tune in because maybe we can have a little conversation here. And I always love hearing what people have to say, obviously. Okay, college football playoff semifinals. Let's dive on into it right now. One second. Our predictions for the college football playoff semifinals will start in the great state of Arizona. The Fiesta Bowl is up first. This is as of recording this and as of being live. Tomorrow night, we are going to be getting the Fiesta Bowl, the first of two college football playoff semifinals. It'll be the Miami Hurricanes against the Ole Miss Rebels. Two teams that pulled off upsets in the first round matchup. When you were talking to people about, the college football playoff semifinal round on this side of the bracket, I think most people expected there to be Ohio State and Georgia both on this graphic, if not at least one of the two. The fact that we have neither of them is astonishing, but it also plays into how good both these teams really are. We're going to start with Miami because, Miami was just an absolute wrecking ball, and they played a violent physical football game against Ohio State, overpowered the Buckeyes in every way. That's how they were able to win. And Ole Miss, well, it was very unorthodox. It was very non-two-script, I should say. Lots of great plays from Trinidad Chambliss. Lots of great plays made on the other side by Gunnar Stockton and Georgia. But this is an Ole Miss team that was not necessarily on schedule, quote unquote, and found a way to win the game. The plays went their way. They made the necessary adjustments. They did what they had to do to win the game. And you could say the very same thing, and that's how Ole Miss is going to have to win this game right here. So 7:30 kickoff on ESPN. Let's start breaking this one down. Just told you how each of these two teams won their last game. Now, I do want to start with Ole Miss here because this is an Ole Miss Rebel team that just quite frankly has to win those plays again in this game. Now, I don't think they need to do that to the factor they did against Georgia. They may need to do it to less. They may need to do it to more. It just sort of depends on the way the game ebbs and flows and what the pace of this game dictates and how Ole Miss is going to need to play. But I will tell you one thing for certain. Good luck slowing down Trinidad Chambliss in this game because the dude played with his hair on fire against Georgia, was playing backyard football. And the thing that I find most impressive about Ole Miss, and I'm going to steal a volleyball term here. I'm a big volleyball guy. I love volleyball. So I'll steal a volleyball terminology. Trinidad Chambliss is a very good player out of system. What does that mean? Well, it means when things don't go the way that you practice them or don't go the way that you script them, he's still going to make things happen. He's still going to make the throws downfield. He's off platform, off his back foot, falling away, side arming, evading pressure, buying time. Anything that you need Trinidad Chambliss to do, he did against Georgia. And I would find it very hard to believe that you're not going to see him do the exact same thing here against Miami. And that's where the problem lies with Miami, because I think it goes without saying, this Hurricane defense has got to find a way to keep Trinidad Chambliss in the pocket. Now, Miami has done a very good job against mobile quarterbacks this year. Last round against Julian Sayin, you just didn't have that issue. If you trap Julian Sayin in the pocket, he's going to go down. That 3rd and 2 play, wide open field, decides to get rid of it. It just shows you what kind of quarterback Julian Sayin is. He's not a guy that's going to take off and run. He will sit there in the pocket, let his offensive line buy him time and throw. Yeah, Trinidad Chambliss is not. He's not necessarily a 1-2 read, boom, I got to take off and run, because Trinidad Chambliss is not a guy that you're going to see gain 100, 120, 150 rushing yards on the ground as a quarterback, kind of like what we saw Jaden Daniels do a couple of seasons ago in his Heisman campaign. No, Trinidad Chambliss is a guy that if he has to, he'll get outside and run. He'll get outside and force the issue, and that's where the problem lies for Miami. This defensive front has been spectacular all season, and they play, as I said a moment ago, a very physical, violent brand of football. You got to transition that over here, but I also think Miami's going to have to be a little bit more of a finesse team in moments, because they're going to need to try to slow down Trinidad Chambliss. And if it's not getting him on the ground, which I think they're going to do a couple times in this game, but it's probably going to be proved to be quite the hellish challenge when you dive on into it, I do believe that Miami's got to finesse a little bit here. I think they may have to run some more stunts and blitzes and backside pressure. Not that they didn't do enough of that already, but I think that that's only going to need to be magnified in this game because of the issue that Trinidad Chambliss possesses. Again, a very good out-of-system, off-schedule player. Whatever terminology you want to use is fine, because it all works and it all fits what Trinidad Chambliss has been able to do. Star in the making, and announced he's going to return to Ole Miss next year. We'll talk about how good a boost that is for the Rebels after their playoff run. But now let's focus on the Miami offense, because to me, Carson Beck is that X factor, and I have an X factor player. Now, I'll talk more about the X factor player in a little bit, because I do want to talk about both of these guys. But for the Miami offense, well, you hope Mark Fletcher can continue to do his thing. You hope Carson Beck sort of more so establishes his rhythm, because I just quite simply think, look, this, when you go back and look at the way their 2 semifinal games have, or their 2 college football playoff games have played out leading up to this semifinal round, Miami has very much so been a team that has gotten pressure. It's worked out, and Carson Beck has not had to do too much. The offense through the air has not really been asked to do all that much. It has just not been asked to pick this team up and move it forward. A big part of that is because Mark Fletcher is running his absolute butt off right now, and he's been stellar, fantastic throughout these 2 games in the college football playoffs so far. But Carson Beck cannot have less than 150 passing yards and win this game. I'm not saying the same recipe can't work against Ole Miss, but it's because of the guy I just talked about, Trinidad Chambliss. When you see him oppose you, and when you know that, hey, I may get pressure and he may not go down. He might be 15 yards to my left, throwing the ball downfield off 1 foot because I did not get there in time, or quite simply because he's that good at evading pressure and buying time. That's the issue this Miami defensive line is going to have to figure out, but it's also a thing to where I think this Miami offense needs to play to their strengths, because while Mark Fletcher has been fantastic, they got some good wide receivers on the outside here, guys. Miami is not a team that is simply devoid of talent. In fact, they are far from it. Malachi Toney, the freshman wide receiver, is a big play go-getter. He has been absolutely fantastic. CJ Daniels can make a miraculous catch out of anywhere. Keelan Marion has had some big moments this season. They even can rely on the tight end Elijah Lofton from time to time if they need a big-bodied guy to make a catch and be able to bulldoze his way forward. I think Carson Beck has got to find his rhythm here. And now starts the talk about the X factors because, again, I will reiterate, I don't think Carson Beck can have less than 150 yards and Miami win this game, at very least comfortably, and make it without issue. We know Carson Beck has been turnover prone. He's been very good at holding on to the football and taking care of it throughout this playoff run so far. Carson Beck just has to find his rhythm in the passing game. I don't think Miami can let him take a back seat here. You can't hide him. You got to put him out in the forefront. And if you're going to trust and know that Mark Fletcher is going to run as well as he has, which there's no reason to believe that he won't, it's time to flash Carson Beck. It's time to really show him it's time to really show the nation what Carson Beck is fully capable of. A lot of people thought Miami's season was dead after that SMU game. And we're going to talk about that SMU game here in just a little bit, because it does become very interesting when you look at that game and how Miami's going to try to prepare for Ole Miss. Now, my Ole Miss X factor is Kwan Lacey. So I got two offensive players here. You could say the defense as a whole is an X factor for Ole Miss because compared to where it's been in some previous seasons, it has not statistically been that great. So you hope that you hope that this defense can step up and slow down Mark Fletcher and cover these wide receivers, because it could be a long day if they don't. Here's why Kwan Lacey is the X factor for Ole Miss. Number one, he still is going to be nursing that shoulder. However, you get the sense and the feeling that it's only gotten healthier from here. But listen to what he did against Georgia. 22 carries, 98 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I know Georgia's run defense has not been what it was when they were winning national championships over the past couple of years, but it's still a really good run defense, and it's one you have to respect. Miami is one of, if not the best team in run defense this season. They're right up there with Indiana, and that physical defensive front is going to force the issue. And there's going to be, I think, very rare opportunities for Kwan Lacey to bounce off of tackles here, just simply because I don't think Miami is going to miss many if one of those defensive linemen gets a hold of them. So I think Kwan Lacey is a big factor here. How does Ole Miss function without a running game is going to be, I think, a pretty big question. And if they can't answer that question, then that's only going to favor Miami. I think you can only ask Trinidad Chambliss to do so much. I think you got to have a complimentary ground game with him, even for as well as he's playing. This game, I think, is going to be fantastic. But let's look at, again, I want to take a look at that SMU game because there were statistics to where when I was watching some other shows that really popped out at me, and I figure I need to share them all with you. So Kevin Jennings in that game for the SMU Mustangs, 365 yards, a touchdown, went 29 of 44. You could see a very similar stat line from Trinidad Chambliss here, along with what he's able to do on the ground and extending plays with his legs when need be, right? A lot of people thought this Miami season was over against SMU. Now they're going to go up against the quarterback in Trinidad Chambliss that might be playing the best football out of any quarterback in the country right now, or you could even have made that argument throughout the entire season. This is going to be a fascinating game. Number 10 versus number 6. Sports books and odds right now. Miami is the 3.5-point favorite. 52.5 is that over under. The numbers from a bunch of different books are sitting right around that margin right now. I think you're going to see Trinidad Chambliss put on another stellar performance. However, what I will say is I don't think you can count on Trinidad Chambliss to make these mind-wrecking, game-changing throws play after play after play. You have to have a run game, and that's where Kwan Lacey is going to try to step in. And I think your defense has to hold up its end of the bargain as well. Something I just don't know is going to happen to what they need it to be able to beat Miami. again, I've said it before multiple times, in fact, and I'll say it one last time. Everybody thought Miami was dead. Everybody thought they were down. And I think a lot of people looked at that matchup with Ohio State and just didn't account for the fact that Miami was in the conversation with Ohio State at the beginning of the season for the top team in the country, myself as included in that. However, this is a Miami team that's playing really good football right now. And while I still don't think they can afford to hide Carson Beck, if he has 200 yards and a touchdown, that could be good enough as long as the defense continues its pressure and Mark Fletcher continues to run as well as he has. I think you're going to see Carson Beck get a little bit more production in this game, but I do think Miami is going to walk away with the victory here. I just believe that this defensive front is going to be too much for Ole Miss to handle. And while I don't think Trinidad Chambliss is going to be sacked 5, 6, 7 times, I do believe that you're going to see this defensive front make an impact, and I like this Miami secondary's ability to be able to cover the weapons that Ole Miss can throw at you. I like Miami in this game. Give me the Hurricanes to win and cover the 3.5-point spread. I think you're going to see Mario Cristobal and the Canes advance to the national championship game in what should be a really good affair in the Fiesta Bowl. I think this is going to be an absolutely exciting game. And on the other side, if Trinidad Chambliss is going to keep making these ridiculous plays again, all you can do, take your helmet, tip it, put it back on your head, and get ready for next season. If he's going to make all the plays again, you'll give him the win. However, I just don't think that that happens. You can't bank on it. And I do think that Miami is going to be a team that walks away from this one. Not even walks away. I think they will earn their victory here. And Carson Beck has a better performance. Miami moves on to the College Football Playoff National Championship. And that's my take on the first semifinal game. If we have no comments, we're just going to jump really quickly into the next one. However, I will give time for people to say their piece about Miami and Ole Miss. I think the Canes have got it. I just think that physicality on the defensive front, Carson Beck, even though the stat line has not been there, he's taken care of the football and he's done things that are necessary enough to help Miami win football games. No, it hasn't been flashy. No, it hasn't been extravagant. It hasn't had to be because this defensive front is playing out of their freaking minds. The Mark Fletcher is playing out of his mind, and Carson Beck trusts his guys. He's got all the wide receiver talent in the world out there. I just think that you're going to see him take it a step up here in this game. All right. I don't think we're going to have anybody say anything, which is totally cool. So we're going to jump right into the second semifinal game here, an all Big Ten showdown for the chance to go to the national championship. Your second semifinal this week in Atlanta. We go to the Peach Bowl for an all Big Ten showdown and a rematch of a game that we got in the regular season. It's the Oregon Ducks. It's the Indiana Hoosiers. Two teams that are going to be meeting again after the Hoosiers beat Oregon in Eugene. And we are going to revisit that game here very briefly. I mean, why wouldn't you? It absolutely warrants the need to go back and look at. What do these two teams know about playing each other earlier in the season? Well, Fernando Mendoza did have himself a good day, apart from the pick six that was thrown, to which at the time tied the game up for the Oregon Ducks. Obviously, they ended up losing it. Roman Hemby was a big difference maker in that game for the Hoosiers. 2 touchdowns, 19 carries, 70 yards. He was really good. Elijah Surratt was doing his thing. But the biggest thing was that this Indiana front got pressure on Dante Moore, which at the time, if you go back and remember after seeing the results of this game, and I thought to myself, whoa, okay, this is an Indiana team that's going to make a lot of noise this season. Because again, coming in, they were not supposed to be as special as they are now. maybe a fringe playoff contender. Schedule got tougher. We'll see how they match up against good competition. And they've just bulldozed and game wrecked everybody by doing exactly what they did against Oregon the first time around. 6 sacks and 8 tackles for loss. That's the recipe again if you want to eliminate the Oregon Ducks and move on to the national championship game. However, for Oregon, there were still some good things to talk about in that contest. Most of them came on the defensive end, got a little bit of pressure, didn't slow down Indiana as much as you wanted to, had some good moments here and there. Again, the pick 6, going to be the highlight of the day for the Ducks, but one of the few games this year, Dante Moore has struggled. 21 of 34 for under 200 yards, just 1 touchdown to 2 interceptions. That killed Oregon in that game, those 2 picks. They ran the ball, 30 carries, 81 yards. That's just 2.7 yards per carry. And if not for the pick 6, Oregon would have lost that game by more than 2 possessions. In fact, I think 2 possessions exact. Nope, more than 2 possessions. And I mean, probably a little bit of a different conversation, but not by much, because Indiana walked away from that game the better football team. And they have been the better football team throughout the course of this season. But you look at the other side to this Oregon Duck team, and the thing that I have constantly been saying about Oregon is they just have not flashed everything that they could potentially flash this year. I think Dante Moore has got some more to give, and he's got some more to show us. I kept talking about at the beginning of all this playoff conversation, the team to watch out for was Oregon, because this is their opportunity to put their foot on the gas pedal and really go and start to assert themselves in ways that we didn't necessarily see in the regular season. This could absolutely be the game where they do that here. However, things did not go according to plan against Texas Tech. I can tell you one thing for certain. If you are the Oregon Ducks and you want to get back into your third national championship game this century, you cannot go 4 of 8 on 4th down, and you cannot rush for, checks notes, 64 yards and 1.4 yards per carry. That includes sack yardage, by the way. You can't do that, because that's not going to beat the Indiana Hoosiers. And that's great and all, as if that happens and Dante Moore throws for 350 yards. I still don't know if that's going to be enough. You got the Heisman Trophy winner on the other side with weapons galore on the outside part of the field, even on the inside part of the field. I mean, Surratt and Cooper and Becker, all of those guys are so impressive, and they got one of, if not the most impressive quarterback in the country throwing it to them. So this is the chance, though, for Oregon to assert themselves. However, I'm going to get into their X factor really early here, because it is 3rd and 4th downs. Let's go back to that game against Indiana. Oregon just did not set themselves up for good scenarios on 3rd down. How do I know that? Because they were 3 of 14. Now, Indiana was not fantastic on 3rd downs themselves. They were 5 of 14. Oregon did go for it 4 times on 4th down against this Hoosier squad. They got it 3 times, but still the missed opportunities there, right? And that's sort of been the theme for Oregon over the past couple of seasons, are those missed opportunities where, hey, you're at the goal line, you try to go for it, and you don't get it. You turn the ball over in opponent territory where, okay, maybe a little too long to kick the field goal, too short to punt, what the heck, we'll go for it. Or you were just in sicko mode like Dan Lanning was against Texas Tech and went for it on every single 4th down that they had, seemingly, including a fake punt in there too. Okay, Mr. Lanning, I see what you're about. That could very well be how Oregon approaches this game. I would caution them, though, you do that and you give the ball back to this Indiana team. When they do force those turnovers, man, do they capitalize. And they feed off of that energy really, really well. So 3rd and 4th downs are going to be the massive key for Oregon here. They just have to they have to set themselves up in good situations. If they do not set themselves up in 3rd down and short, maybe the 3rd down and medium is going to be okay, but honestly, I would even try to avoid that. I'd get yourself into 3rd down and shorts, obviously, and if you're going to go for it on 4th down, you've got to pay it off. You simply must, because against a team that has been this good and this impressive all season long, one missed opportunity on fourth down could be the game. I'm not saying what will be, but it could be the way that this Indiana team is playing. Now, with the Hoosiers, again, it's so easy yet tough to talk about the game plan, because you have to look and you have to think, okay, what do I think Indiana needs to do to separate themselves? And what do they really need to show out and do to beat the Oregon? Beat Indiana? That's the answer that I got for you, because as long as they defend the run, defend the pass, get pressure, and Fernando Mendoza looks like the Heisman Trophy winner, I don't know that anybody in the country can beat this Indiana team. And I think a lot of people are starting to find that out. Their wow moment came against Oregon, because last year Indiana buzzsaw through their first 11 or 10 games. Then they ran into Ohio State, kicked the crap out of Purdue, but then got beat down by Notre Dame in the college football playoff. Narrative carried over into this year. A lot of people looked at that game in Eugene. All right, we'll see how Curt Cignetti can do it. And, well, he did it. And they've even faced adversity this year. They just keep making history and keep earning the biggest win in program history. It was the game against Oregon. Now it was the Big Ten, or I'd say it was the Big Ten championship game against Ohio State. Then it now was the Rose Bowl against Alabama, and you have a chance to top it right here. Curt Cignetti and this coaching staff, I mean, you just can't speak. You can't speak enough volumes. You cannot write enough books or text long enough, or as many as you can publish, that describe the job that has been done in Bloomington. It's been phenomenal. It's been fantastic. And the way that I think Indiana is going to win this game is simply by being themselves. But you want an X factor? Okay, it's right over here. Defend the pass, which sounds really simple, yet it can be complex. This is an Oregon team that, look, if they do not have success running the football, then this is a secondary led by D'Angelo Pons that's going to have to match up with some of these wide receivers, mainly DeCarry and Moore, and some of these other weapons that they have, because Dante Moore is going to need to have himself a good day. I think this run game, what the run game needs to do for Oregon is it needs to be so much better than it was against Texas Tech, and probably even better than it did the first time around against Indiana. I do not think it needs to rip off 5 or 6 yards per carry. I just don't know if Oregon's going to be capable of doing that against this Indiana front. Now, if they do it, credit to them, because they're probably going to be well on their way to winning this football game if they can accomplish that feat, something that nobody has been able to do against this Hoosier squad this season. But the biggest factor offensively, besides putting yourself in good situations and capitalizing on third and fourth downs, is you have to find a way to get Dante Moore going. His stat lines have not been inherently bad in the college football playoff games, but it has also not been the breakout, light on fire, hey, let's show the country what we're made of type of performances yet. And I think those are going to come. It may very well come in this game. It might not come. Who knows? This is a very interesting game to try to break down, to try to predict, because I think Oregon needs to show themselves, hey, let's play the best version that we can. Let's be the best version of ourselves. Let's get Dante Moore going. Let's run the football as well as we can, and let's generate some pressure on this opposing offensive line to Indiana's Fernando Mendoza. Let's do that. Are they going to be able to do it against this Hoosier team? That is the question. They've just been so consistent, so dominant, really all year long. There's absolutely a reason Fernando Mendoza won the Heisman. Roman Hemby, if he's going to run as well as he did in Eugene, watch out. This is a pass rush that was all over Ty Simpson in the Alabama Crimson Tide offensive line. This just becomes a really interesting game to try to break down. And I'm going to say something here that well, I've said before, but now I'm going to say it as a statement, maybe even a prediction to some of you out there. I do think this is the game where it may not lead to a win because I think this Indiana team is that good, but this is the game where Oregon, I don't even necessarily want to say breaks out, because I think that is the incorrect terminology here. Oregon is not going to break out, okay? Oregon coming in here to the Peach Bowl, to Atlanta, and beating Indiana to make the national championship game is not going to inherently surprise a ton of people. It might surprise a few, but this is an Oregon team that I think, while they haven't necessarily been saving something, in fact, I don't think that's the case at all, I think they know what they're up against. And I think Dan Lanning, while he has struggled to jump ahead and win the meaningful football game, quote unquote, I say that because it's the narrative, not because I believe it. He's won plenty of big football games in his time. But the way you go back to Penn State's run last season, right? Nobody gave James Franklin any credit for winning those first two playoff games. Why? Because they lost it in dramatic fashion to Notre Dame with a trip to the national championship on the line. You could see the very same, yet similar story here. But at the very least, when you break down this game, one of the two teams is going to be playing for their first ever national championship, no matter who wins. For Oregon, it'd be a familiar sight. They've been there this century. For Indiana, I mean, it would just be another chapter to what has been an incredible 2-year story, and probably, to Curt Cignetti's words, should be made into a movie where I believe Curt Cignetti should star as himself, because there is no guy that you can get to fill in for him. So let's take a look at the odds market. 3.5 is the line right now. Indiana is that favorite with 47.5. This is sort of an aggregate line. It is as of going live and as of this video that you may be watching if you are watching the replay. Okay, all Indiana's got to do to win this game is to continue to be themselves, right? Well, we've seen Indiana in pressure this year. It was against Penn State. They came away on top of it. I think if they get into a pressure scenario, well, they were even in pressure against Ohio State there too. You could say they were in pressure for a little bit against Alabama. Remember how that game started out? 2 sacks for the Tide defense, and then Indiana just fixed everything they needed to fix and bulldozed the Crimson Tide. I think Indiana's going to face some more adversity here. However, I'll be a little bit bolder, and I'll stick with my prediction at the beginning of the college football playoff when I was initially going through the bracket. I think Oregon wins this game, in which inherently they are going to cover. Now, the reason that I believe this is I think you're going to see Dante Moore have a better game. I think you're going to see this rushing attack not be super prolific, okay? That's not what I'm predicting. Again, I don't think they're going to rush for 5 or 6 yards per carry. They may not even rush for 4, but I think they're going to do enough to be able to help this Oregon team out. The biggest thing that you cannot predict is the scenarios and ways that they capitalize on 3rd and 4th down. That's the one factor to this game to me that is completely up in the air, and it's what makes this thing really hard to try to sway in Oregon's favor. No matter, or especially because of the quality of opponent that they're going to be playing on the other sideline. However, I will say this. Oregon's got the talent to get this thing done. I also think they have the necessary pieces on the defensive front to what Alabama was able to do for seemingly only the first drive in that Rose Bowl game. I think Oregon's got the guys to do that to this Indiana offensive front throughout the course of this contest. I am going to pick Oregon to win this game, and I think the Ducks move on to the national championship. Now, picking against Indiana is a dangerous game. I've done it a lot this year. I think as many people have, right? Maybe now, not at this point. I did pick the Hoosiers to win the Rose Bowl, okay, where, again, maybe the popular upset pick was to go with the Crimson Tide. I'm going to stick to my guns in the preseason, or I say in the pre-bracket, the pre-first round era, and I will stick with the Oregon Ducks. I think Dante Moore has himself a nice performance. I think they're able to get pressure on Fernando Mendoza. And I believe that this is an Oregon offense that, when presented with those third and fourth down opportunities, I trust Stan Lanning to get those calls right. That's the kind of coach he is. He is aggressive in that mindset. And if it doesn't work out, again, another one of those tip your cap moments. But I do believe the Ducks are going to find a way to get this one done. So I have Oregon moving on to the national championship game, ending the season for Indiana. What a season it was. If this is the result, it's not going to shock me if the Hoosiers walk away from this one with a win, even if it's by double digits, and they're able to get into the national championship game, because they're a really good football team. They might be the best team in the country. I think Oregon upends it, gets it done. Give me the Ducks to go to Miami to play for a national title. All right, there you go. There is the college football playoff semifinals predicted. So in both matchups, I have the two lower seeds moving on and playing in the national championship game. Now, what I will say is, I said at the beginning of the bracket, I think the winner of Ohio State, Georgia wins your national championship. That's not the case here, right? Either Oregon or Indiana can go get beat by either Miami or Ole Miss. This field really is wide open. However, I will say Indiana is the favorite. So I'm going to pat myself on the back for boldness and going with Oregon, even though I don't think inherently it should be that bold of a pick. I think the way that Indiana's played football this year, it's going to be. So that's my take. I believe that Oregon's just going to find a way to get it done. Again, it's so hard to sway this one in Oregon's favor because Indiana's just been Indiana all season long. They've been consistent. They've been near elite, at elite, if you want to say that. And this is a Duck team that needs a good performance from Dante Moore. They got to find a way to keep third and fourth down short and capitalize the opportunities that they have. Another thing I didn't say, turn those red zone trips into 6 points instead of half of that, because that's also going to pay its dividends against this Indiana team. I just can't wait for this one. It should be a phenomenal game there on Friday night. So, all right, we will give a little bit of time here, a little tad break. And once we hit about the 45-minute mark in this stream, we are going to be talking about some things in the transfer portal. Now, actually, we're probably going to jump into it pretty fast. We're going to have a much longer discussion about things going on in just the college football calendar in general, and fixing the transfer portal and fixing the timeline and all that good stuff. We'll do a whole live stream for it after the national championship game, so on and so forth. But I do want to talk about a couple of things that have been made note of by the transfer portal in this process. And then if anybody has some questions, I will answer them after that. So let's go ahead and jump on in here, because I'm not going to make this segment of the stream too terribly long. However, it is things that I think warrant some good discussion and things that we need to talk about. So the transfer portal is a mess. Again, who would have thunk it, right? It's the wild, wild west out there, and what could be the wildest cycle yet. But this chaos is a little bit different to me. Maybe not to you, but it's a little bit different to me because of some of the things that we've seen transpire in this transfer portal cycle and in this process of guys flipping between schools and trying to weave themselves out of NIL deals. I mean, just crazy stuff. Again, you have seen probably the wildest transfer portal cycle. The amount of names, big names that are in the transfer portal that are rumored to still be entering the transfer portal in the coming days before the weekend hits is nuts and is crazy. So here's a fun stat for you before we dive on into a couple of the issues that I want to briefly talk about today. As of this moment, and to my knowledge, 25% of Division I college football players have entered the transfer portal. Now, Nate, what does that mean? Give me a number here. Well, okay, let's take the 136 FBS teams. Let's take the 129 FCS teams, because Division I college football player, that gives you 265? Yeah, 265 teams, and you times that by, let's give each team a 105 player roster. I know some may be more, some may be less, whatever. Let's just go with that. Even if you wanted to do 100, that's 26,000 on the low end. We'll just shoot for the low end. Why not? 26,000 collegiate football players in Division I. That is a lot of football players. 25% means around 7,000 of those players are in the transfer portal. That's nutso. That is monumentally insane. In fact, we had nearly, if not over 4,000 enter at the end of day one, by the end of day one. So this whole transfer portal thing is chaos. It's running amok, if you will, but there are technically three, but I'm going to lump them into two different parts here. There are two different things that I want to talk about when looking at certain guys that are in the transfer portal and the way things that have transpired. And we're going to be talking about the quarterbacks here, namely. I'm unaware of it happening to any other player at any other position, but it wouldn't surprise me if more instances like what I'm about to talk about have circulated around the country. So we're going to start before we dive anything. Do you remember back when Nico Iamaleava had the whole situation with Tennessee because it revolved around NIL money? I think it's pretty well known that the parents or guardians were involved in that process, and it led Nico to go to UCLA because he or some parental or guardian figure went into head coach Josh Heupel's office and asked for more NIL money than the deal he had signed, and he got told no and got shown the door. And subsequently, now he was the quarterback at UCLA last year. So that to me was the first domino that fell, to which it was going to happen to somebody. It's unfortunate it happened to Nico, but it was going to happen to somebody. Now there are more dominoes for me that are starting to fall. And I want to start by talking about this guy that you see on both sides of your screen right now. This is Demond Williams. The University of Washington has threatened a lawsuit on Demond Williams. Why? Well, read the description down there. The quarterback signed an NIL deal on January 2nd, the day the portal opened, by the way, and signed an NIL deal to return to Washington to play football. Now, don't get me started on the whole terminology between signs a deal to return. That's a conversation for a different day. Technically, it's one I could have here, but I'm not going to. Demond Williams has decided, actually, I'm going to go ahead and enter the transfer portal. Okay. Couple things that I have issue with this. One, there are the people that talk about professionalization of college football. You're professionalizing the sport. While I don't necessarily agree with that statement, I am going to take the terminology and apply it literally here. Let's take one example of a player that signed a deal in the National Football League last season. Let's take Myles Garrett, just set the sack record for the Cleveland Browns. Signed a new 4-year deal this past offseason to remain with the team. Do you think that Myles Garrett could sign that deal and then go back into the front office and say, actually, you know what? I've changed my mind. I would like to explore other options beyond Cleveland. No. And no matter what other things happen in the background of Myles Garrett, because I know that that's been talked about, I'm simply throwing out the example of an NFL player cannot sign a contract with a team and then, barring just because they feel like it, say, actually, I've had a change of heart. I don't really want to do this. And this is This is really tough too. And I'm not going to take a side here on this because I get DeMond Williams' perspective of wanting to explore other opportunities, and the collegiate athlete perspective would say, that's my right. I get the chance to go out, search out these other opportunities and see what's out there while leaving the door open for a potential return to Washington. He absolutely could have done that. But when you go through and you sign your name on that dotted line, buddy, you're locked in. Horrible snap, but let's continue. You're locked in. You cannot change. This is not something that you sign your name on that dotted line and then you can erase it later, right? You're supposed to sign in pen, not pencil. And that's for a reason, because once your name is on that contract, it's abiding. And I'm unfamiliar of the language and things that go into NIL contracts and the necessary conversation and the necessary terminology that is needed for this specific situation, something I am currently working to educate myself on how these deals are written. But what I do know is that when you sign this deal, it pretty much tells the university, hey, I'm going to play football for you next season. I'm very happy to be back here. Well, apparently DeMond Williams had to change heart. So he is technically in the transfer portal while having an NIL deal with Washington. So a return to Washington is not out of the question, but now you get into the conversation, right? NFL players can hold out. They can decide to not play, and the front office can punish them in whatever facet they see. For college, all this is very new. So it's very weird and different to try to figure out. The one thing that I will say about the DeMond Williams perspective is this. Sometimes, and I'm not saying this is the case with DeMond Williams, but sometimes you take a look at some of these kids, teenagers, young men, whatever terminology that you would like to use. You take a look at these students, and not everybody has a figure going over your shoulder saying, you got to make sure to read the fine print. Okay, this is how much money you're getting. You're going to put that into a 401k. You're going to put that into your savings fund. You're going to invest this much. And just not everybody has that. And the sad reality is not enough people have that. Again, I'm not saying this is the case for DeMond Williams, but maybe that explains the reasoning or thinking. Maybe he had, and we can't act like this doesn't happen because it does. Maybe what happened is he signed his name on the dotted line, and some other school came calling and said, how much do you sign that deal for? Oh, we can do better than that. And then he entered his name into the transfer portal. Sure, I guess technically that's tampering, but it happens all the time, okay? Your school has tampered. My school has tampered. Everybody's school has tampered, okay? Tampering runs rampant throughout the college football transfer portal process. So the word tampering is going to get thrown out everywhere because it's happening everywhere. This is the second domino that has fallen, and maybe there have been more tiny dominoes, but to me, this is the second big domino that is falling. Apart from a coach just saying, no, we're actually not going to pay you that much, which now has happened a whole ton to where it's leading players to transfer out. They're not getting the NIL money that they want. Now you have, for the first time at least, that I could think, besides the whole Matthew Sluka situation last year, where there's going to be a lawsuit at place. And Washington has said, and while I'm not sure of any formal documents that have been signed or put forward to court, what I do know is that they released a statement or saying that they will explore every avenue to pursue any potential legal activities, parameters, whatever, legal activities towards DeMond Williams if he does not go through with his signed NIL deal. So this is going to be a very interesting situation to watch. I would love to hear your thoughts about it, but I got one shorter thing to talk about here, and it's the quarterback quarrel thing. So just a ton of different quarterbacks, including these two that you see on screen, in Anthony Calandria and Minchie, or forgive me if the last name is pronounced wrong, but these two guys on screen, the guy over here to my right, originally had committed to the Nebraska Cornhuskers, decided, actually, I'm going to decommit from Nebraska and then recommit to Kentucky. So there's one instance. And then you have Anthony Calandria, who had a very similar avenue to what we just talked about with Damon Williams, although he did not have an NIL deal signed with UNLV. He originally put out something that said, yep, guys, I'm going to come back to school. I cannot wait to return to UNLV. And then decided to enter the transfer portal anyway. So what's worse, going against your word, going against a legal binding document? I'll let you make the decision on that. But this is not good. You have players now jumping ship from committing to their schools previously. You have a guy who is now locked into his second school this cycle. He was a Cornhusker for all of, I believe, barely over or under 24 hours. And now he's going to Kentucky. And that's changed the landscape of how other players are going to foresee where they are going. It's such a big headache. It's such a dastardly thing, because this is just quite simply a situation that can get out of control as per the current guidelines, because you just saw a guy do it. What's stopping, say, Calandria now from decommitting to Nebraska and then committing to Kentucky, and then decommitting from Kentucky and going back to UNLV, and then decommitting from UNLV again, all before the transfer portal? It's just such a mess. It's such an interesting conversation to try to have and break down. And I could sit here and ramble about it all day. Unfortunately, we do not have the time for that. But trust me, when we get through the college football playoffs and we're into the winter and spring months, we're going to be talking about the transfer portal, and we're going to be talking about all its issues. We're going to be talking about how I would put a stop to them, at least try to mitigate some of the things that are being seen throughout the country, because stuff like what's happening against Damon Williams, I mean, the fact that a university is having to threaten legal action against a quarterback that could still very well be on your football team next year. And then you got these two guys who are just going against their verbal word, and also now going against places they have committed to before. I know a lot of the Husker faithful out there were not happy to see that happen. Maybe you got an upgrade in Anthony Calandria, who knows? But this is an issue that goes bigger than the quarterback position. It's an issue that you may even say goes beyond the transfer portal, because while college football is one of, if not the greatest sport on the planet, it does have its problems, and it does have its issues that need to get resurrected and fixed. This is one of them. The rest of the transfer portal process is going to be very interesting. There have already been some big commitments, all of which we are going to talk about on a position by position basis as we move forward here, and as the transfer portal process and window nears conclusion. But there are some big problems and big storylines going on within the transfer portal right now. Still a lot of names to watch for if they enter. Still a ton of names available within the transfer portal. It's just going to end up being a very, very interesting cycle, and very interesting conversations I think can be had surrounding the entirety of what's going on in college football right now. So there's my little report on the transfer portal. I know I got really rambly, probably didn't make a whole lot of sense, but man, is this just something that probably going to end up getting out of hand very, very fast. And I think more dominoes are starting to fall. The first one, I believe, was what happened with Nico, and now more are starting to tumble down here. So Look at that. We got everything I wanted to talk about done before the hour mark. I will hang out for a little bit. We are now into the Q&A portion of the stream. So if you have a question that you want answered, whether it's about anything in college football, it don't matter to me. I'm pretty open. I'll stay on here. If I'm not getting anything, I'll hop off. But as long as I'm getting stuff here, I'll stay on for a little bit. So thank you all so much for tuning in to the stream here, by the way, as we enter the little Q&A portion. If you want to ask a question, go for it. If not, hey, that's totally cool with me. Go down, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell. You don't want to miss any live streams that do happen. So on and so forth. So appreciate those of you that have stopped by, whether you've been with me the whole way or whether you've been popping in and out. Maybe you're only watching for about 5 minutes. I still really appreciate you clicking through on the live stream. So again, my name is Nate Bope. I'm a sports media graduate. I love the sports world, but especially the world of college football. So thank you, all of you, for supporting me in this journey. It's taken a transition, and I understand it's probably going to take some more work to grow what I have already put forth on this channel and changing my standard. But just want to say thank you, and I appreciate all of you for tuning in when you do. If you do, really, really do love uploading videos here on YouTube and making content for all of you. Nothing coming through yet, so we'll hang out for a minute. Oh, look at that. Another Ferris State guy is going to D1. So we'll respond to that later. Yeah, nothing coming through right now, so you got 3 more minutes to pull a question through, or I'll bow out of here. I mean, I got other things I can work on, more content to make for you guys, job stuff. So it's okay, guys. I can sit here and look pretty. That's fine. All right. Well, I'm not getting any bite. So to the people that are still in here, hey, maybe when I, grow the whole live stream thing and I get the routine down a little bit, do a little bit better job of streamlining it and making it look a little bit nicer, I definitely will do another one of these with hopefully more success. It's okay. I didn't waste too much time. But, hey, those clips will be up later. Thank you so much for tuning into the live stream. Again, my name is Nate Bope, otherwise known as Tailgate Nate, telling you to play hard, but tailgate harder. Thank you so much for tuning into the live stream today, and we'll be back talking to you Saturday. Saturday, we'll be back talking to you probably Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, and we'll be discussing the college football playoff semifinal round, reacting to everything going down, and give you a slight preview for the national championship game. All right, take care, everyone. Have a good night.